Right. What was I going to say to? Well, there was some. Oh, right. I remember. I have one of those water carbonation devices. We have one in our kitchen, and I use it all the time because I like bubbles in my water. And I actually bought smaller size bottles. It comes with liter bottles, which are just a bit big. When I make it, it doesn't keep well. The carbonation I find isn't durable. So I drink what I make, and a liter at a time just feels like a bit much. But I found these half-liter bottles, which are just perfect. I don't even have to worry about where the cap is, which is good because I lose the caps. So I just make up a half-liter bottle of water, and then that's it. I drink it down in a matter of minutes. But because of the shelter-in-place orders, very much trying to limit going out. Plus, the canisters are hard to find, hard to get a hold of, even in the best of times. So I've been very diligent about making sure that the canister that's in place gives its all, right? That canister has to be finished before I'll replace it. And today it reached a point where it looked like it was bubbling, but it was like the time before it had bubbled perfectly, and this time it was just stirring the water. There was no interim state. It went from being perfectly capable of carbonating to now it was like I was blowing a straw into the water. So there was zero carbonation effect. So I ended up having to change the canister. There was still stuff in it because it was coming out. It just wasn't coming out with enough pressure to carbonate as opposed to bubble. So today, with that in mind, I have another poem about a train, or poems about trains. I'm reading through the book Railway Rhymes, edited by Peter Ashley. And I've been reading through these in the order that they appear in the Chronicle, or in the anthology, rather. And today is a poem by William Wordsworth. It's the second William Wordsworth poem. And if you remember from the previous poem, William Wordsworth is not enthusiastic about the railway. He's not enthusiastic about the damage that he sees it doing to the landscape that he admires, that he loves, and that it has this sort of spiritual, romantic feel to it. My problem with this side of Wordsworth is that it is just a bit curmudgeonly. He's just a grumpy old man. The poems where he's writing his distress are not lyrical. They're not transcendent. They're just sort of clever gimmicks that he used in a political campaign. And I think he comes off on the wrong side of this. Look, I mentioned this in the earlier episode. The argument about extraction of resources to fuel capitalism in Victorian England, with the train as a representative of that, is absolutely one I buy into. But the idea that the landscape is permanently damaged because people now have access to it is one that I profoundly disagree with. I think there's a point where transportation fits on the side of curation of the landscape rather than exploitation. I think that that's the vector or the spectrum on which to gauge these things. So, fair enough, William Wordsworth didn't like trains. So here's the poem. It's called A Just Disdain. Proud were ye, mountains, when in times of old your patriot sons to stem invasive war entrenched your brows. Ye gloried in each scar. Now, for your shame, a power, the thirst of gold, that rules o'er Britain like a baneful star, wills that your peace, your beauty, shall be sold, and clear way made for her triumphal car through the beloved retreats your arms enfold. Hear ye that whistle? As our long-linked train swept onwards, did the vision cross your view? Yes, you were startled, and in balance true, weighing the mischief with the promised gain, mountains and vales and floods, I call on you to share the passion of a just disdain. So yeah, I mean, Wordsworth doesn't like trains. And you know what, fuck him, I love trains. And I am looking forward to getting further into this anthology and getting into like Wits and Weddings, the Larkin poem, or some of the other more modern poets where the train is an emblem of travel or of distance or of psychology. This is just a bit tedious. Now, what I do like about this poem in particular is the characterization of the mountains. In this poem, let's set aside my just disdain for this poem. What I do like about this poem is the effective characterization of the mountain as a personality or as a character. The mountain is entrenched with fortifications from battle, from war, and the mountain wears that as a badge of pride. But it also gives the impression of a sort of a furrowed brow, like this enormous giant character of a mountain with a furrowed brow, deep in thought, with this perspective on time that is much broader than the human interference, even that represented by the trains. I like the line, and clear way made for her triumphal car, through the beloved retreats your arms enfold. So the arms of the mountains are enfolding these isolated spots, these beloved retreats. And it might even be in the unfolding of the arm that the retreat is created. Perhaps in the armpit of the mountain is a small waterfall that is rarely visited by humanity. And when you find it, when you stumble upon it, it is as if you're in this idyllic, untouched landscape. And the mountain is the guardian and the creator of that space. You know, it feels very like Tolkien in this sense, where the mountains have a character, Haradras itself fought off the traveling party, the fellowship. Mount Doom, of course, has a character associated with it. And the landscape itself has personality. And I think that comes across in this poem. You know, it makes me think of Wordsworth, the younger Wordsworth, out walking over these mountains and experiencing them not just as a landscape or as an environment, but as a living condition. And the walking through that condition is a pilgrimage or an interaction with the spirit of the earth and the spirit of mankind in this very transcendent and enormous sense that is mostly lacking in this poem, except in the framing of it as a message. You know, it's delivered to the mountain itself. Proud were ye, mountains. The whole poem is addressed to the mountain range itself. And I think in that sense, this poem has a recapitulation of some of the romantic ideas about distance walking and about participation in the environment and about this enormous force that nature presents that scours our humanity and leaves us with this spiritual soul that is immortal. The practice of walking and placing stones, cairns, individual monuments on the landscape fits in with this, right? It's like you are in a place and the positioning of a stone, a single pebble, just feels like the right thing to do. When you're out walking, maybe it just occurs to you that you need to stumble a bit and kick this pebble on the path so it goes a few feet in the other direction, or more directly, to pick up a stone and place it off to the side somewhere, perhaps 2 or 3. Perhaps someone else has done that, and you notice it, and you add a stone to it. I mean, this is how these monuments, these small, intimate monuments of our human interaction with the landscape get formed and get built. It's like a poetic resonance structured on the landscape. I mean, it's the same impulse that leads to henges, like Stonehenge, or other mysterious alignments of rocks and stones. We feel it the same way when we're out walking and have this instinct to just change something. And once that change has been initiated first, then other passers-by are intrigued, compelled to do the same thing. Purpose unknown for the most part, except that it is a poetic gesture on the immense landscape of the mountains. So the mountain as a figure outside of time made me think of the Kurt Vonnegut book, Slaughterhouse-Five. The character in Slaughterhouse-Five, Billy Pilgrim, who is outside of time and is held captive or has some kind of relationship with the people of the planet Tralfamadore, the Tralfamadorians. It's a misnomer to call them the people of Tralfamadore. They're simply the Tralfamadorians. But there's a description of the Tralfamadorian sense of time that really strikes me. They talk about time as a mountain range, off in the distance. And the light perhaps is highlighting different aspects of the mountain range. Where there are trees, it appears dark. Where there are no trees, but other kinds of foliage or rock, perhaps there's almost a pink haze on the mountain itself. The edge of the mountain against the sky changes over the course of the horizon, but the mountain extends across our vision. And the Tralfamadorian concept of time says that time is that mountain range, and any point on that mountain range off in the distance is as real in the moment as any other point. There's no sense of the past is an alien location that we can no longer return to. The past, in scare quotes, is just to the left or front a little bit. You know, the definition is different because the mountain itself is all of the perception of time. And as long as it's on that mountain somewhere, then it exists. Different from our view, which would be a narrow slice and says, right, I'm moving left to right and I see a thin slice of the mountain, and that is the now, that is the real, that is what exists. Kind of denying what's to the left and to the right. And I get again, from this poem, I get some of that same sense as well, right? These mountains have been around a lot, and the war, the invasive war that entrenched your brows was in times of old. I mean, is that Arthurian? Who knows what he's talking about? Is it the Norman invasion? I'm not sure what mountain range he's talking about, but it's from long ago. And look, the mountain is invaded then, but is able to adapt and even be proud in its adaptation. There's a real character behind this mountain, and there's a real sense that the mountain moves beyond that immediate. You know, the non-Tralfamadorian view would be to say this moment of war is the moment when it is simply part of the mountain. It would be as if the y-axis of our vision of the mountain is really the z-axis of time laid out in front of us. So there you go. I think the next few sections, or the next section of the book, starts to get away from people bitching about the trains and starts getting into more of the social stories of the railway, and then gradually, after about 20 or 30 poems, we start to get to the stuff I'm really looking forward to, which sort of Betjeman, Hardy, Philip Larkin. So stick with it. If you like this, subscribe to the podcast. It's really great to see people subscribe and know that people are enjoying and listening. People meaning you, knowing that you are listening and enjoying. So give a share, let other people know. And if you have questions, or if you have other train poems that you particularly love that may not be in this book, let me know. I am thinking at some point, once I've got a bit of more momentum with this established, there's a wonderful section in Walden where Henry Thoreau talks about the train line that passes by his cabin. It would be interesting to take a sidebar into Walden. And then the futurists, the Italian futurists, had a very different take on steam power and industrial energy in general. So maybe I'll do a sidebar on that. Again, once I'm a bit further into the task at hand, I don't want to go off on a tangent right away. So